Could you describe the room that you used to work in out at B plant?
Yes, that's one of my issues that I don't talk about very much because it is very painful and brings back a lot of memories. And when you enter 211A and B, you immediately see a room that looks very innocent, but it's very lethal, and you've got to learn that you had to learn what was in that room. And above the room was what we call the aqueous makeup area, where they mix chemicals to dilute the radiation. And there's big tanks up there with all kinds of nasty waste in it. They have mercury problems up there. They have a basin that overflows, and they have cracks in the walls, and they have cracks and leaks and pipes that leak and valves that leak. When they put the roof together on B plant's roof, they can't seal the valves, the piping. They had to put that in as a separate equipment issue. And then when it snows or when it rains or whatever, when the roof finally got contaminated so bad, it leaks down into the plant, and it has all the flow areas in the plant, and they know about them, and it just leaks, and it's not going to harm you, though. Always remember that DOE's excuse for anything is it will not harm you. Radiation, especially low levels of radiation. So in this room is my desk, and I occupy both rooms because they are my offices, both rooms. And let's start in 211B, where my manager worked, the one that had melanoma and died of melanoma complications. There's a big...
Just wait till it's over, Craig. It's all right.
It'll be over in a second.
There you go. Maybe.
Okay, if you could. In the rooms that you worked in, 211A.
And 211B.
Okay, you worked.
We're in 211B now.
Okay.
There's a big pipe that comes down behind my manager's desk against the wall. You've got to imagine all kinds of intricate piping that goes along the ceilings. You got to remember that the pipes are wrapped in a cast-like white substance because it contains the asbestos and transite and whatever else is going on with those pipes. And this big pipe that comes down is, I would say it's like a foot in diameter. It's about that big. And at the bottom of that pipe is a hole. And that hole used to drain radiation water on the floor. My boss, they hid it behind filing cabinets or a computer desk or something, so it wasn't noticeable. But around that hole will be towels at any given time that are brown, yellow, the colors that we learn to recognize, chalky substance on the floor. And my manager used to take those towels and wipe up the liquid that came out of that pipe. And there's testimony on record that from DOE person, as a matter of fact, that he would dispose of those towels without telling anybody because he didn't want anybody to know they had radiation problems there. So I was exposed to that probably the whole time I was in the office, which was quite a few years, and so when you come around to where my office is, I can see into that room. And one day I was sitting at my desk and I smelled this horrible odor, and so I called, because you're supposed to call someone, I called maintenance this time. PCBs were leaking out of the fluorescent lights onto the floor. It was brown, yucky stuff. They came up and cleaned that up, packaged up all the water that the janitor had tried to clean it up with because it had PCBs in it, whatnot, chemicals, whatever, and took it away in plastic bags, said not to worry about it, you didn't get that much exposure. Well, we all know what PCBs are, I think. And so I got that exposure because someone hadn't changed this light bulb out when they were supposed to, because there's a lot of maintenance going on all the time. You're not supposed to let them get so bad that they're going to leak that oil out of that light fixture. And then if you come around into the room I actually worked in with my computer, and my desk was in there the walls were always wet with the leaks from the aqueous makeup area, and it was so bad that the mold would grow on the walls, and it warped pictures. It was like sitting in a room that had been soaked in something most of the time, especially as it got later into my career there. And they didn't check the tanks like they did at PFD. These tanks leaked all the time.
And you could smell an odor.
There's a definite odor
from the seepage through the walls and the
Right.
various leaks that would happen through the ceiling and the floor.
Right, and you got to remember that the testimony says that it was 50% sodium hydroxide, which is always present at B plant because that's one of the main chemicals there. Always got nitric acid. I think the testimony says nitric acid was at like 57%, which is what they think burnt my esophagus because I inhaled it so often. And there was nitrates like the workers have been exposed to. Then there was one other element, I can't think of what it is. They actually admitted to this being on the walls and finding it on the floor. And there's lots of witnesses who testified to the color, which is green to yellow to brown to chalky. That's all on record. And so when you sit there, you're thinking, well, you know, at first you didn't know what was going on with you because I had no operations experience. I just thought it was an office. You know, I didn't even know the aqueous makeup area was above me for a long time because you're as a secretary, that's your place of work. You don't go exploring the you know, in the halls because they won't let you do that, especially in B plant because it's prohibited to go certain places anyway. So you're sitting there, and one of the worst incidents that happened to me was sitting there one day, and from my closet there was a pool of water that came under my feet, but I didn't notice it for a while, and my feet finally got soaked and they started itching really bad. So I got up and pulled my feet up on my chair like you would, and I pulled myself over to the telephone, called an HPT or a radiological technician, and she came running up there. I remember she running into my room with her counter, and they pushed me literally out of the room in the chair and told me to keep my feet up because it hadn't reached yet where she couldn't reach me and I could pull myself around. So I went into the bathroom and cleaned up my feet and put my shoes somewhere so they would dry. My purse was soaked, I remember that, because it was sitting on the floor. And of course everything had to dry out. It came back later and said that you're just fine, nothing happened, just a little chemicals, nothing, no problem. So when my picture was warped, for a long time I never told anybody about it, and because I wanted my lawyers to have it, and so I tried to confiscate that picture for a long time, because on the back side of the picture was up against the wall and it had the residue on it. So they came and confiscated it when they found out about the picture, and they took it off, and as far as I know, it's in Washington, D.C. still. And they measured it, but they only measured the picture part. They didn't measure the frame where the residue was. And I put up a squawk about that picture since I left the plant, trying to get it back, FOIA-ing it, whatever, because it had that residue. But the residue they'd wipe off by now, I'm sure, but maybe not. But one day I was sitting in my office, the janitor came in, and she was in the other office, and she came running around the corner. I looked in there, and it looked like a snowstorm, one of those balls that you shake up, and it looked like a snowstorm. And I didn't recognize it because I had some training. It was asbestos. Well, what happened? She said she got a blast of it in her face, and somebody above in the makeup area again had breached the ceiling, and it hit the asbestos pipe, and it released all that radiation and all that transite and all that asbestos. So they have a different story to tell, and they again smoothed it out, and there was an instrument technician that came down and said he cleaned it up. Well, they took an after reading instead of a before reading, and by the time that was reduced, and it's so silly because I have all the records and they don't even know it of their drafts to draft. And it started out as like 3 cups of asbestos, wet asbestos, which is better for me because it was wet, but was it wet? It came down to later maybe a cup of asbestos, then it got down to a half a cup, then it got down to a quarter of a cup, then it got down to a little bit about around one desk leg. So the final record, and it was done, it was approved by the same person who assaulted me that runs B plant, and he had it down to very sanitized final record on July 9th, 1992. And but these series of records draft, I got a hold of them through FOIA, and they don't know today that I have them. So I was exposed to probably, I don't know, I think the final count was about 30 some odd chemicals and that were never recorded.
And how long was this going on? What was the time period?
9 years.
9 years. And why did your boss not report some of these spills on the floor that he mopped up with rags? Why did he just, what was he afraid of?
Bob Higby was a very reckless operator, they tell me. And there's testimony to say that nobody really wanted to work with him because he was so reckless. And he never really thought radiation was a problem until he got melanoma himself. And it was like watching a man that was devastated when he found out in his own mind that he probably had a problem because of B plant or his operations days. Because I understand he was very reckless with this stuff. It didn't bother him. It didn't bother him to wipe up that radiation because he didn't owe anybody an explanation in his mind. And that was pretty typical of all the line managers, though. They don't think that stuff hurts you.
He ran B plant, or he ran?
He was, yeah, he was a building landlord.
Okay, so he was
actually
in that building a lot, in your office a lot, and he ultimately died of melanoma.
Melanoma had complications, right? And on Thanksgiving Day, November '91, and he brought me into his office once in July of 1991, and he gave me a Job Excellence Award and says, "How can I help you? What have I done to you?" He was almost like he was trying to save grace and trying to clear his guilt. And he said, "I hurt you badly, and what can I do?" And so I handed him some safety issues that I'd been exposed to and my coworkers had been exposed to, and he took them to town to deliver them himself. And this man is very weak by now, and he was slumped over his desk, and he had a bad meeting that morning. And so it was really sad for me because I realized this man realized what he'd done to me. And he could not stop his managers from doing what they did. And so Mike Griegel's and Ron Bliss's, and it's the vice president, and the B plant manager is Mike Griegel, who confessed that they had indeed exposed me to radiation. So he tried desperately for 2 months before he had to go home and give in to it to stop these people, and they would not be stopped. So from 1991 until Larry Musin of DOE fired me, it continued. And so if Bob had been able to live, I think he would have put a stop to it. Or they would have got rid of him, I think. But that was the one man that helped. And believe it or not, he helped me in the end. At least I knew I was sane and that it really did happen. And he was trying to help me get through the safety issues. And he knew what was in that office. They moved me in and out of the office to try to keep me. They had drains in the ceiling that they went down to a bucket,
The drain and the one pipe, you said there was a hole in the one pipe that went down to the floor?
To the floor.
It's a pipe that, this is like almost a foot in circumference or diameter.
Right. And
it was in your office, and it was like
one of
down
my
along
offices.
one of the walls.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of this pipe, there was a hole.
A hole.
And,
and it leaked.
and
It
material
leaked.
liquids came through this hole. Radioactive material come
Right. That's
right
what
into
the
your
testimony.
workspace.
Yeah. And I was in that office.
And that was hiding
as
behind
much as I
filing
was in
cabinets
mine.
or something,
Uh-huh.
this pipe?
They'd hide it behind the filing cabinet.
Like you're not going to notice it or something?
Like you're not going to notice it. And behind my office is another closet that is full of asbestos. Then behind that's the electrical gallery, which people walk around in, and it gets contaminated. The safety showers are there. People wash off. They read monitors there. And so I got exposed to that. And then on the other side, electrical gallery is a full-length canyon.
Wow, the plutonium
And
stored,
maybe Darlene can tell you about the canyons, what's
Okay.
in the canyons, or Joe or someone.
All right.